In today's video, we're gonna continue the Karokan rating climb. I'm gonna be playing, hopefully, 4 model games against intermediate players, with the twist that the first one of them was kind of overperforming for his rating, to say the least. And the main reason why I'm doing this is because I really do believe that the best way to learn an opening is by actually watching model games other than, let's say, trying to simply memorize moves. This way, you can get an overall feeling of what you should be doing in general, regardless what kind of weird stuff your opponent may be throwing at you. So without wasting any precious seconds of your time, let's just dive right into the action. Alright, boys and girls, getting another game against e4. Gonna be sticking with your favorite, probably, if it's not your favorite opening. I don't know what you're doing on this video. Anyways, we do manage to get ourselves a classical variation. White obviously has a choice between these, pushing, going for the advance, or yeah, what you will actually see quite a lot in your games throughout a variety of move orders, the exchange. Now, for now, we're gonna be sticking with the classical, and here we're gonna be playing the main move, especially for low-rated players. I recommend to take. No need to mess around with any like interesting sidelines like a6. Maybe a little bit later on the channel I'm gonna dive into that. And here, this is the key move, okay? Knight to f6 is critical because we're gonna be taking with this pawn, and this is gonna give us well, a very nice cocoon for the king, but additionally it's gonna give us an interesting game, not a boring draw after the main lines starting with bishop to f5. So this is quite important, and make sure to take with the e-pawn. Taking with the g-pawn, if you do that, you're just a degen. But let me know if you want to see that on the channel at any time. So, gonna be playing this, and now the development is pretty simple. We're gonna be developing this bishop always to d6. We're gonna castle short almost always. Actually, mark that as always. This bishop, usually whenever it can, it will go to g4, landing there on the pin. Don't wanna rush for it immediately though. And the b8 knight usually finds itself onto the d7 square. So, gonna do exactly that. And the order in which you wanna do this, not to get confused. Usually, especially with the black pieces, castling is a big priority. So please do not rush with the pin. Now, okay, you castled, king is safe, all that. Now it's the time. It is that time of the year that we develop the bishop to g4. And as a rule of thumb, whenever you are having the Tartakower structure, which you can, by the way, identify by noticing these double pawns, we're gonna be answering h3 by always sliding back the bishop, okay? If you just give up the bishop here, you're just gonna find yourself in a symmetrical structure where you are just worse because you don't have the two bishops and your opponent controls all the squares. And notice that I am not afraid, not a single bit, by any sort of g4 early attacking move, just because it is mainly weakening the enemy king. They're just overextending. So I don't feel like g4 is putting us under any serious pressure. So that's not a problem. We're going to keep the bishop there. And next up, we want to play something like knight e7 and rook e8 fight for the open file. And my opponent plays rook e1, which is quite a precise move. Else, yeah, it's very common for this position that people, let's say, ignore open file and they make such moves where rook e8 comes in very handy. Okay, after rook to e1, I am gonna start with rook e8. I do believe that is the best move, which is already creating a winning threat. Yes, winning threat, you heard it right. We're threatening to take queen e1. And after queen takes, bishop f3, gf3, if he gets the messed up pawn structure, you can think of that as a strategically winning position for black, just because the enemy king is gonna be in ruins for the rest of the game. Yeah, I think we already had that on the channel a few times, explaining how to exploit such things, and for this reason he's mainly forced to take. I'm gonna take back with a queen. I'm gonna put my knight onto d7 like a good boy, trying to, you know, keep developing pieces with every single move that I make. It is not maybe a completely obvious move to play, but he finally decides to do so. Just gonna recapture, not much of a choice there, and so far we had everything under control. Yeah, I told you, play 97. What next? Okay, how do we play this kind of weird looking middle games? Maybe you had something like this in the past and you just feel like because you have this sort of, let's say, weak pawns, uh, you're losing all the end games. Okay, that's not something new. You are supposed to lose most of the end games because white has this majority on the queen side with 4 against 3. So one of the key rules that you should remember is, okay, for having the worst pawn structure, we're gonna try to compensate with an attack against the enemy king. It is not completely obvious yet how we're gonna do that, but watch. So first, I think rook into the open file. Very nice move, usually placing your rook behind the enemy queen, even by having like a million pieces down that line, is already creating very scary vibes. And yeah, next up, a typical maneuver for this structure. Okay, he plays knight to d2. But I was about to say, very typical maneuver is knight f8, and then knight usually goes to e6 or g6 if g4 is not a problem trapping the bishop. But now he played knight d2. And we have an interesting choice. I believe both moves are equally good to either exchange or to slide back the bishop. I think, well, computer is quite okay with exchange and then knight f8, knight e6 with a roughly equal position. But I think, practically speaking, against low rated players, let's say under like 1500, it could be way more efficient to keep more pieces on the board, just simply because look at their queen. It just feels like all of his pieces are kind of fighting to get a square. So, of course, white is completely fine here. It's not like he's in any danger yet. But I just feel like this, could potentially perhaps make him a little bit uncomfortable. It's more of like a human decision here, keeping the bishop. And then, yeah, well, important what not to do. I can tell you quite clearly what not to do. Do not push c5. Even though I get it, you feel like there's a little bit of tension here with the queen. Maybe you wanna do something a little bit risky. Maybe you wanna like call DM the enemy queen. Don't do that, by the way. And instead, I would say just maneuver your knight and perhaps look for knight f4 ideas. Or even an idea that you can prepare his bishop back and then eventually combine the queen with the bishop. Look for a sneaky attack against the enemy king. But now he plays a pretty interesting move, and by interesting, I mean one of the very stupidest moves that I have seen in a long time. He has played the move bishop to h5, which does absolutely nothing other than, I guess, threatening to give me the pawn cube. Hey, who said pawn cube is bad? I want the pawn cube. I'm in love with my pawn cube. Please give me my pawn cube. Opponent, I beg you. Take this. I'm gonna be more than happy just playing with my own cube, okay? I don't need to do a lot of things in life. Who told you you need to achieve greatness? Or be successful, make a lot of money, or have all the ladies? No. If you get the pawn cube, you can be happy, okay? Life is simple. Opponent, please don't ruin that. Because there is genuinely no other goal behind bishop to h5. Like, I cannot possibly imagine a human that plays bishop to h5 and then all of a sudden is like, sorry, bro, I changed my mind. I'm not gonna be taking. Okay, he is semi-normal, let's say. I'm gonna take back. I'm gonna be getting my desired pawn cube, and if you're thinking this is weird, well, you have no idea what is up, what is about to come, since, well, I already told you that this could potentially be on the agenda, and he just plays the move queen to g4, which is not bad. I think bishop to b8, I could just stick with the move that I already mentioned, just to save a little bit of time, and knight e6 may be played with pressure on d4. In this position, it may appear to be quite tempting to go for maybe the move f5. I'm kind of, this is the kind of thing that you don't want to rush with. I was once chatting with my former coach, Constantin Lupulescu, who has been in the world's best 100 players for, I think, over a decade. And with a very serious face, at some point, he, let's say, grabbed me by the shoulder and told me, okay, Alex, I'm about to tell you a grandmaster secret. The pawns do not move backward. And you have to like really let that sink in. All right, you wanna be very careful with these pawns because you push this, maybe g5, knight could land there. Push this, you never know. So wanna always double check at least. That is the point. I'm gonna play knight e6, and after this, I could potentially just continue with one of the ideas that I have mentioned earlier, or I could perhaps really lose my patience and go f5. Which one of the two? I think because it is the pawn cube, I may want to get started with g5. Now, is that going to give him a hook for h4? Okay, I'm going to do something I think rather clever. I'm going to play queen d7. I'm not like fully showing my intentions yet, because usually against this type of low rated players, it is quite enough to make waiting moves, and they will usually, let's say, struggle to keep up. Okay, how do we make waiting moves? I'm just gonna play b5, controlling queen side, so his pawns are kind of immobilized for now at least. I could be playing queen d6. Okay, he plays bishop c1. He's making sensible moves so far. I gotta give a little bit of credits to this opponent. If I could be in time with g6, king g7, and then swing the rook, I think we can start slowly piling up pressure. But if he finds h4, I think, I don't know, h4 is a good move. It's not gonna be that simple to be better if he tries to activate. However, if he plays in this style of like just slow moves, bishop c1, no nothing, I think we can get him. But yeah, for his rating, honestly, not bad. Yet again, not bad. So let's see what he has in mind. a3, okay, this is exactly the kind of thing that I want to see, because kind of like my opponent's mindset is that he has a very solid position, which it's kind of true. And he just tries not to ruin anything. So, hey, impressive maturity for my 1200 rated player. He's, more wise than most of the guys in his elo. But okay, finally, there we have it, h4. I don't think now it's coming with such a good timing. Do I have to take? I think I kind of want to take. Queen takes, then rook comes with tempo. He takes with a knight, which is somewhat clever. I think I may have to play f5, as much as I hate it, because knight g6 seemed to be a threat. Things are starting to get a little bit frisky. Notice queen e5 is not a move, and knight f5 I don't think should be enough to be any scary. And there, threatening check, I think this move should be all good. Not to mention bishop f4 was a thing, but this should be, I think, more than enough. And hey, looks is actually benefiting from the open file. Now I should also try to benefit from not getting flagged. Hopefully I can make a few moves in time. We're just gonna do the bishop there. I'm just gonna play a bishop move. I just kind of panicked. I'm gonna be honest with you. I kind of have no idea what is going on the board, but I will try to make sensible moves while hopefully not make a complete fool of myself. So I'm gonna do that, and as much as I would love to get my queen over the h file, I don't see any sensible way of doing so, and I'm just gonna centralize. Happy if he takes, improving the position of my knight. And yeah, if he does nothing, I guess I'll do nothing. I think it's not yet time to go for overly aggressive business, even though maybe I could. It's not necessary. Yeah, that's a solid move, and maybe I have a tactic. Okay, you guys pause the video. I think it's tactic time. I think it's starting to be sexy time. Boom. Knight g5. He cannot take. Why? Obviously there's mate. But I wonder if this is saving him. Sadly, this might be saving him. That's kind of a pity. Whoops. Uh-oh. I didn't really see that one coming. That's what she said. Okay. I just need to defend my pawn. Hello? Okay, this probably means our attack is over before it even started. Well, all you need to do, just do not panic. Okay? Keep your position. Or at least that's what they say. Harder to implement in practice. I'm gonna get rid of his strong knight though. I think that's understandable. Okay? I'm gonna do that and I'm gonna play maybe king f7. Yeah, I think king f7 is once again understandable. Now it's annoying that he could benefit from opening of that file, which for some reason he does not. So I'm just gonna place myself over there. Can I break with c5? Maybe. More so after that move. Notice how I can use the second rank to activate. So knight before, quite a careless move. Just trying to play a bit of hope chess. Hopefully the hope chess is not gonna work out for my opponent. Maybe it does. He's gonna take on b5, so still not simple yet. Where do they find these 1200s, man? These ones are tough. Oh, he has c4 that I completely forgot about. That's a strong move. If he finds c4, I'm gonna be impressed. Still gonna play g5 and not completely over, but yeah, this I was kind of happy to see. Because now I can take, and I'm down a pawn, but at least I get very active. So maybe we can save it. Maybe, I won't promise it, okay? Actually, you know what? Maybe winning a pawn by force. King e3, I got rook a2. So, yep. Now, is there actually any chance of winning this endgame? Hold your horses there. I think that's a little bit over optimistic, but hey, we'll give it a shot. Give it a fair shot. Okay, I want g5, because if I get g4, then maybe this is getting a lot of interesting. And yes, I saw that he has the opportunity of pushing, but I'll have to use my own king to block. If he's clever, he will give up on the d pawn to trade. However, if he's over optimistic, he can easily get in trouble. Now, for instance, a move like rook d5 makes easy draw. Now, when he fails to find that, it kind of tells me that we may have a chance to find a way to trick him. Maybe rook a6 simply. Rook d5. Okay, so I'll start by giving a check. And he still needs to find rook d5. If he finds that, good for him. But yeah, and here he has d7. Kind of unlucky. Kind of unlucky. Yeah, I'm gonna show you at least how to make a draw. I'm gonna show you how to defend Filider's possession, which I think is quite instructive. So, king f6, just defending, attacking his rook and trying to get with my king in front of the pawn. And the key position is a little bit later. So far I can just wait. I'm gonna let him push the pawn. I can even try to stay with active king if I want to, but let's see, we just wait. Alright, this is just a theoretical draw. No way to lose this if you just know one thing, basically. So alright, I'm gonna still keep shuffling. He's gonna try to, I don't know, act like he's playing for a win. And well, it's kind of impossible for him to get my king down, but I'm gonna do it on purpose just for the sake of explaining this. I'm gonna do rook a7. Yeah, I'm gonna let him, I'm gonna do like king all the way to g8. So the key idea is that, well, notice where my rook is placed. This is the key position. So as long as you have your rook placed on the 6th rank, this is cutting away his king. And when he pushes g6, you just have simple perpetual. Rook a1, easy draw. Now you just wait like this. You move your rook on the side. He has never this because you can take. So this is pretty much Fiedler's position. Remember this? Only rook endgame that you really need to know. And yeah, instantly fails to win because this position is obviously an easy draw. You'd be surprised, by the way, of how many 1000 ELO players fail to hold this or understand this endgame. But it's very simple. Like, first of all, if you go there, you lose. So keep your king in front for as long as you can. And when you're getting to choose for the, let's say, last rank, you just need to remember, stay in front of the damn pawn. Okay, this is the pawn. Stay in front of the damn pawn. So that whenever he tries to come close, you're gonna be taking something called opposition. Okay, now opposition is pretty much whenever his king is going there, you're placing right in front of him, and it's his turn to move. This is the so-called opposition. May sound kind of odd right now. You'll get used to it though if you go over a few more endgames. And now we have opposition, and the problem is whenever he checks me, it's gonna be a stalemate. So yeah, tries to keep the pawn, and this is stalemate. Okay, very well played game by my opponent. Definitely not gonna report this guy. Curious to see what the accuracy he had though. Scored like a very casual-ish 89. I mean, if he wanted, he could have crushed me in that endgame. I'm sure that at some point he missed a c4 move. Yeah, by the way, if I play rook d7 there, I was completely fine. But yeah, I misplayed, and yeah, clear c4 was sort of winning because he has 3 connected pawns. But anyways, under the circumstances that this game was played, not gonna be commenting on it too much, so we can just move on to the following game. Alright everybody, getting another game with the black pieces. Gonna be sticking with the Karo Khan. And okay, opponent 1240. Let's see what he has ready for us. Is it gonna be another advance or an exchange? Perhaps a Tartakower. We haven't had a Tartakower in a while, but here we go with the advance. So against the advance, you don't really have that many options, like Bishop f5 mainline, or what my favorite move for lower rated games, the Bonvinikal's variation, which is c5. And you have to like really understand that as soon as you play the c5 move, it is gonna be all about the d4 square. Yeah, unless they take. If they take, then there is like nothing sitting on the d4 square, so no need to watch out for that. But usually when they play the most common variation with c3, it's gonna be a lot about piling up pressure on the pawn highlighted with the blue color. I'm pretty sure you already know what d4 square is, but I'm just gonna play like knight c6 here. And important to watch out for the move order. Lots of people go cd4, inaccurate move, because that gives them opportunity to play knight c3. You no longer get the desired pin on the knight. After knight c6, if you look closely, he doesn't have a whole lot of moves other than playing knight f3. So most of the times, I would say like 70%, you will face knight f3. Like another decent chunk of games, they will play the bishop to b5, and I'm actually super glad that we get to deal with this. It's a very common line that, yeah, I even mentioned it in my chessable course on the Karo, where it's important to understand what white's threat is and then remember the move by move. Because essentially, if you just try to get your bishop out and then develop, you're giving him opportunity to exploit you by going dc5. And after e6, white has b4. Keeping clean extra pawn, yeah, black can barely play the game. It's not like they will really punish you always, but in order to deal with that, it's best to just start with the queen to a5. And really take this with a kilo of salt, because we play the move queen a5 only in this very specific position. So please be aware that it's not like you see a bishop on b5, oh, let's just move the queen there. No, it's only in this position. And I think it's very important and valuable to remember this idea because it happens quite a lot. So we do queen a5, and this is a multi-purpose move. So first of all, it's forcing white to make a decision here. Usually it's bishop takes, and after pawn takes, notice how the queen is defending c5. And another idea behind the queen being placed on that square is that we are pinning the pawn on c3, meaning that after c takes on d4, he's unable to take with the pawn, which would, keep his usual strong center. And now he has to take back with a knight, which is not exactly what he wanted. And here we have a position where you can defend the pawn on c6 in many ways against the threat. But my favorite is to also stop him from castling. And we can do that by going queen a6. It's a sneaky move, but I feel like it just makes the white players so uncomfortable. I mean, what are you even going to play? It's mainly queen e2, I would be assuming. Like, the computer comes up with a pretty crazy idea to keep the game equal, which is to go a4, b4, b5. But who starts randomly pushing the pawns when you haven't developed these pieces? So I don't think they're very likely to find that. And if they don't find this, by the way, white is going to be much worse, I think. And he plays queen f3. Essentially, not doing anything, just developing the queen. And it's important to understand that, okay, this may be one of those scenarios when we kind of just have to play with a bad bishop because we don't have f5, we don't have g4. So box the bishop in, and please be aware of the fact that the bishop is not gonna be passive forever. Eventually, the bishop can activate using this diagonal. So we're gonna keep developing the other pieces. Okay, he goes knight back. So when he goes knight back, I can, simply ignore him by going knight e7, knight g6 perhaps, trying to put pressure on the pawn on e5, and try to, in the meantime, just finish my development. So I think that's what we're gonna do. I have option to play knight f5, but I feel like the knight is kind of like a little bit pointless. It's sort of an active knight, but it's not really targeting anything. So I'd much rather have it here pressuring the pawn on e5. I think more or less forcing opponent to go bishop f4, or yeah, perhaps queen h5. I guess this is a move as well. And the natural thing to do would be bishop e7. Okay, bishop usually goes to e7 because eventually we can push these pawns. And you don't want to play bishop c5, have the bishop blockading your pawns. Notice that this is a mobile mass of pawns that we can potentially take advantage of in the future. So I think I'm just going to get castle, and then perhaps we'll try to solve the issue of the bad bishop. He plays knight d4. I think his next idea may be to push f4. I want to kind of get rid of the knight immediately. I don't want to, let's say, give him too many options, like allow that knight to be very active for a few moves. Just living in the middle of the board completely rent-free. No, I'm going to play c5. We cannot be sitting there, okay? That is our camp. So he goes knight back, okay? This is nice because we have managed to stop any kingside play potentially with f4. And the queen really feels like, it's kind of like a lonely queen in our camp. So perhaps that can be vulnerable at some point. Now, I can castle. I just need to watch out whether there is any interesting knight g5 for my opponent. I could also think about a way to potentially bring my queen kind of back onto the king side with this type of idea. But what I notice is that perhaps in this position we could do something like queen c6, bishop b7, where the threat can be even stronger than the execution. So, like eventually playing something like d4, I think can be very annoying for my opponent. So I think I'm just going to start with this move. We're going to be delaying castling for a little bit. And we're going to wait to see how he's willing to develop. Because if bishop g5, maybe we just take and then play h6. And we don't have to commit with our king very fast. Like, sure, castling was totally okay, but we already know that the bishop really likes to be on this diagonal. So he plays the move knight to d2. Okay, I think knight to d2 is not the best just because it's blocking the bishop. And once that happens, also opens up the door for a move like knight f4. Now, is this actually providing us with any goods? Like he will be forced to go queen g4. Yeah, attacking the knight. We have the check, king h1. And then can we like long castle or play g6? It becomes a little bit of a tricky position. So yeah, I think for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna stick with castling. I do believe perhaps this is objectively better, but I don't want to confuse like any of the viewers. I'm trying to keep these games as clean and easy to understand as we can. So I'm not gonna try to like go immediately for the kill, but I'm gonna try to keep a solid position with very simple moves. And I think one important concept that you really need to understand whenever you have a pawn structure like this, well, give me a second because he's trying to do some trickery here. I guess he's initiating this idea, and I think we can simply start attacking the knight, because knight e6 thinking pawn takes, he wins knight. Well, I have the queen that's covering, so I can take with the queen and keep the extra piece. Same, after knight takes, I can take with the king defending the knight. So I don't think he has anything better than knight back. He may even try to go to h3 just to keep the f-pawn open, but I don't think that's really gonna help. So let's see what he does. Yeah, he goes knight h3. I guessed it correctly. And we're gonna set up the queen in this annoying position, you know, like preparing the sniper. Just look at this coordination. Very important, like queen in front of the bishop. And imagine you play d4, that's like literally delivering checkmate. So as I was saying like earlier, you want to be very careful with pushing these pawns. Even though I have mentioned it's a mobile mass of pawns, I think you get really the most value out of it by not pushing the pawns usually. Because whenever you push like c4, let's say maybe you can throw in a knight in your face, or you play like d4, then your pawns are kind of stuck or become weaker. So these pawns are kind of nicely placed like this already, controlling these central squares and restricting the enemy pieces. But I feel like here we already have a better position than usual, so we may really benefit from this move at some point. I mean, I can even play now. It's just that, you know, I don't want to play hope chess, you know, just dreaming about mate on g2. Is he actually threatening to take on h6 and then play something like knight g5? Huh, that may be a thing. However, whenever that happens, I have d4, and that I think really slows him down. I cannot do king h7 either because of check. So yeah, I think I'm gonna play rook f d8 in this position. It's a bit of a weird move, but it kind of prepares a path for my king to escape in case things get very ugly. And if I was him, yeah, I would sack. I think it's good for him to sack, trying to get some play. But notice that now I can easily play defensive move. But even better, I think now it's to play counterattack. So this is pretty much defending against knight g5 just because we have bishop takes. And notice he cannot take with a knight as he would love to, threatening to mate me on f7. Just because he needs to be constantly defending against the thingy on the long diag. And here taking with a pawn gives him activity with rook c1. But we have even a better move, taking advantage of the pin. Like, rook is untouchable. And if he does not take the rook, well, the rook is more than happy to swing over g4 onto the next move. So I think, yeah, we managed to turn the tables quite nicely here. Like, who's attacking who after all? Like, putting pressure on g2 already. Queen f3 is a threat. Rook g2 a threat as well. He has to play rook d3 if you ask me, but then maybe a simple move such as bishop a6 is kind of picking up even more material. I mean, I could consider other ideas like perhaps rook d3, knight h4, putting even more pressure on the knight. But he plays queen h5. He's essentially defending against rook g2, but he forgets about the other threat, which is queen f3. Now, threatening to mate, and on g3, well, we can just checkmate. So, not sure what I was thinking I'm gonna say there. Yeah, I'm actually quite happy about yeah, what we managed to do here. On one hand, kudos to my opponent for trying a pretty interesting sacrifice. Like I normally am quite firm in my speech about how low-rated players tend to over-sacrifice. I think here it was really a position where it was worth it. Since if he does not sacrifice, he has nothing good to play for. The reason why this is actually such a disgusting position to play for white is simply because they have no pawn break. And a lot of the times in chess, the difference can be made where one side is winning simply because they have a pawn break to play for and the opponent does not. So in this case, we are on the nicer side of this with d4 ideas. Another idea that I had in mind is to push the pawn all the way to a4 and perhaps keep some pressure on the b2 pawn. And as white, it's really kind of like you're playing random chess right now. You just need to try to defend. So after the threat, let's say if you're not careful and you play maybe like, I don't know, rook c8. Let's say like knight hops. This is already very dangerous. You can easily get mated. This is what I'm talking about. But to highlight the main point, after d4, if you try the same thing, I have bishop takes. And you can no longer take it with a knight because the checkmate would have been available. So yeah, all in all, I think this ended up being a very nice typical game against bishop to b5. Make sure to remember queen a5. I always go over this together with my students and tell them to remember. They never remember it, so you can try to do better. So with that being said, I think we can move on to the following game. Okay, look who made it this far into the video. Shout out mom and dad. Alright, we're gonna be getting another Karukan game it seems, and my opponent is going for the so-called classical variation, where I'm just gonna be, just playing it very simple, very casual, gonna be going for main line. Important to take first before you play knight f6. Alright, I cannot stress this enough. You guys probably think that I just sound like a broken record, but you still have no idea how many people mess these things up by playing knight f6, therefore allowing pawn to e5, and your knight does not have a good square. So it's important to do this trade and then develop the knight. Notice how we directly gain a tempo by pressuring the enemy piece. And also a common mistake that this may induce is white playing something like bishop to d3, which just gives you a free pawn on d4. You can take it, no traps. Black is better, almost. So they're taking. I recommend you stick with the main recapture, just playing it for a safe king. Additionally, I guess if you're really weird, you can take back with the g pawn. But you could let me know in the comments if you ever want to see that on the channel. So we're gonna be sticking with a very simple play yet again. Just preparing this very nice cocoon on the king side, which, well, you may have already guessed it that, okay, why do we allow double pawns, you genius? That is already a mistake. How the heck are you teaching chess on YouTube? Well, the first question was supposed to be, how the heck am I teaching chess at all? But, yeah. Wait a little bit, you'll understand why this is not such a huge problem. So we're gonna start with bishop to d6. Already, fair to mention, typical mistake there to just rush with getting the pin whenever you can. It's like, you see a pretty girl, what are you gonna do? Like, start doing conversation out of nowhere, introduce yourself? No, you're just like, gonna ignore. That's how I want you to do the knight on f3. You see the knight there? Stop playing bishop to g4 immediately. Let's not act like you guys approach every single lady that you see on the street. Or at least maybe you let me know in the comments. Maybe I am not aware of my audience. So, okay, opponent gets the castle. So, very important now that you played bishop to d6, now that you finished development by castling, this is the perfect timing to actually get a pin. And don't get me wrong, like if my opponent was to play something like h3, that is not a disaster. I don't want you to see these positions as it's a matter of getting bishop to g4 or a die. And please notice how the bishop is placed on d6 quite nicely, already targeting the enemy king. Because some people may make the mistake having the bishop kind of passive staring into the f6 pawn. So in the Tartakower structure, meaning you have double pawns, cocoon for the king, bishop always goes to d6, bishop always goes to g4 when you can. And on h3, we have another very nice rule that we're always gonna slide the bishop back. If you take, that's just like missing the whole point. You know, just stay, give up the bishop here. No more pressure. Just wanna slide it back, and then what are we gonna do? We're gonna be occupying the open file with a move such as rook to e8, as well as I want you to be comfortable developing the knight to d7. Way too many beginners just kind of overthink here, and they try something like c5, knight c6 just because they saw that idea once against the advance, and it's very nice there. They kind of try to play it universally, which is not how it works. Playing c6 and c5, it's a very risky committal decision that works mainly only against the advance. So hopefully that's clear for everybody. Gonna get my knight to d7. I could have started with the rook anyways, but it's not like my opponent can stop me from doing it. So yeah, I just did that move order because I felt like that. Not like would have changed anything. And notice that he plays bishop d3 then bishop to e2, just because of how annoying this pin is, and we're never afraid of g4 because that is just pretty much a bit of a premature attaculation for my opponent. And we get a very interesting position after knight to d2 because I think the move is good. I think the move is quite solid, and I'm pretty sure like perhaps the computer's favorite would be just bishop swap and then knight f8. But I wonder if it makes sense from like a practical perspective to keep bishops on the board just so that we make our opponent's position kind of trickier to play with more pieces on the board. So I think I'm gonna do the following here. I find bishop g6 interesting just because it is not very clear what to do with this bouquet of pieces. And I'm just gonna play knight f8. Yeah, so far very standard. And really, the biggest idea that you want to remember when you are playing this structure, make sure to collect the free pieces. Okay? Actually, that's a side point. But, main idea, in order to compensate for having the worst structure, where pretty much all the endgames are worse due to this majority that white has on the queen side, you want to play for the king. Bishop c7, queen e6, or you want to be taking 3 bishops. So, rook takes on e3, collecting the bishop. Still, not completely obvious as f5 is, well, trapping my bishop all of a sudden. But we are winning a pawn, and more so, his position is terrible. So I'm just going to continue with the obvious plan, get my queen to d6, I already told you. And of course, after the pawn takes, not even going to waste any time, we're going to be going for the pawn cube. Shall we? Nah, just getting the knight here, it's better. I just feel like having the knight for the king. Even though, you know, me, as much as I love my pawn cube, I'm a simple man. I also like to get my knight involved into attack and mate even faster. Okay, don't forget the knight move backwards. I could go rook to g3, like, you know. This rook on g3 feels so uncomfortable. It's just like some strangers park their car in front of your house. And they just like hang out there. That's how it feels like having a rook onto g3, just like that. And I'm not gonna move. Like, see? He's trying to induce me the idea that I should go back. No, no, no. I got some unfinished business here. I'm gonna still keep my rook, still attacking g2. Perhaps on a good day preparing knight h4. Targeting both the rook and the pawn. And, well, there could be b5 incoming. Notice that I still would love to get my queen d6 move, but the knight is stopping it for the time being. So, yeah, I'm sure a move like knight f4 would have won just fine there, double attack, but I wanted to highlight this idea. Preparing to get a queen, thanks to this battery. And on knight to g4, not only that there is idea to exchange sack, but perhaps we have simple move h5, and then the knight is kind of forced to leave by force. It's like not negotiable at this point. However, he tries the move knight to f1, which indeed it protects there. But yeah, now it allows the other idea. The knight lands on f4, creating a million threats, almost like an octopus knight, watching everything. And we're just about to infiltrate in my opponent's position. Pretty disgusting, I know. But hey, this is why you sign up to play this Tartakower in the first place. Just because you have a very easy strategy, you just need to know where each piece belongs and then start collecting your opponent's pieces. I mean, Rook G2, hello. What is up, enemy king? I'm just gonna collect a free bishop. I like my free bishops. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, I think there is this unspoken rule that a free bishop dates better than not a free bishop. Anyways, you get what I mean. So, opponent resigns, nothing really that surprising over there. Critical mistake of the game, the fact that he played the move f4. And notice how keeping pieces on the board, this was like the biggest decision of the game. Like if you look at it with a computer, I knew both of them are kind of equally good, but I just made more of like a psychological decision just because I felt like exchanging would make my opponent's game somewhat easier. He would have less things to worry about. Therefore, I decided to keep after spending quite a bit of time. And then, yeah, knight f8, he instantly went wrong. Yeah, f4. Notice if he had queen on e2, at least bishop would have been defended. If we try to justify that. So now just take and black is winning. But even if he was not blundering, I mean, bishop c7, queen d6 just looks like a very scary idea regardless. Just imagine white plays something casual like b4, trying to push their pawns. You go queen d6. They think, okay, that achieves absolutely nothing. I can defend with g3. Well, think again. Because you saw the bar, this means black has a completely winning move. If you find already the famous theme on the channel, sacrificing the rook, or the rook, and then you have checkmate. So remember these ideas, and you should be doing more than fine whenever you face either knight d2 or knight c3. Make sure to start by taking, then play knight f6, and make sure to win all your games. So with that being said, I think we can move on to the following game. Alright, everybody, managed to get a black game. Let's see what this opponent will have against our Caro-Kann. He's rated 1300, so perhaps expecting a somewhat better opening. And we have the exchange. Now, what you essentially need to understand about the exchange is that, well, first of all, knights develop on their natural squares, okay, like knight c6, knight f6. Against this specific move order, I normally like this move, because on c3, precise it's bishop g4. And okay, he actually gets to play it, which is just, yeah, getting us into the main line. I mean, normally I don't expect any people to play this below 2000, but here we have it, I guess. And it's quite nice to start with bishop to g4, because on queen to b3, we have a very strong move, which is stopping one of white's main ideas. Because if you play, like, let's say, the more passive queen c8, queen d7, then he gets bishop f4. And this is essentially a transposition to the London system that white wants to have. But the key idea is that here queen c7 works out just fine. And that's stopping him from playing bishop to f4, which is essentially the key detail why this variation works, okay? This is very important. It is what some of the best Caro-Kann players do nowadays. Some names that come to mind are Vincent Keimer, Alireza Firuzia, and Alik Banzea. So after f3, we're just going to slide back the bishop. Idea is to get it to g6. And here, I think it's important to not allow a trap that I believe I once did. So if you just go e6, I think he has bishop f4. And after queen d7, he has bishop takes on b8. And after rook b8, well, you lose like a patzer, bishop to b5. Believe it or not, I actually lost like this once. So it's important to do knight c6 first. And after this move, essentially, black is having no problems. Even though white eventually gets this bishop move, it doesn't really matter because in the meantime, he does not get the normal London system setup. Like you never see knight to f3 in the London system. Like ideally, he would have pawn back onto f2, this knight to d2, and this knight to f3, so that his pieces make some sense. Not the case here, so we just play queen d7. And like after any g4, knight g3, bishop can easily slide back, so that is not a problem. Okay, I think it's quite interesting the way this opening has developed. I had many games like this on my main account against very strong players, so yeah, kudos to our opponent for really studying his opening, I guess. But yeah, it's quite often that whenever white has this type of setup, if you look at his pieces, they really feel kind of messy. It's not clear what he's going to be playing for. And we can start with e6. We can also play the move bishop to g6. Essentially what you need to understand about these structures is that, well, we're generally going to be winning by pushing these pawns, which is something that beginners normally don't do. Okay, beginners would develop. Okay, we can do bishop d6. I think I like to start with the trade. I see potentially after bishop d6, I'm not really bothered by queen b7. Because usually there is rook b8, rook takes on b2. But it's more the fact that he can take and then play f4, f5. And his position makes a little bit of sense. So I think I like to start with this, just to keep him guessing a little bit and create a threat against his bishop. He'll mainly now take, I believe, and we get to open the rook. We don't really think about getting a mating attack after you open that rook, even though I know it's like super tempting for beginners to like hope for a checkmate after that. I think still realistically speaking, it's kind of complicated to achieve. So it's still probably gonna come down to castling short, but okay, bishop to b1. What a move. Well, he's just so afraid to the point where he plays bishop b1, mainly not to give us open file. He's going next level, but it's a bad move because it's kind of blocking his rooks. It's just very silly. So yeah, I think we can just continue normal development here. A move like bishop d6 is just fine. Bishop e7 reasonable if you're scared to give up the pawn on b7, but as I already explained, yeah, we will always have the rook b8 counterplay, so no need to really care about it, to be honest. He instantly goes for it, which is kind of funny. I think we're gonna go rook b8. And after queen a6, there's gonna be a question of whether I want to throw in rook b6 or not, because sometimes that's a thing. Like rook b6, queen a4, and then take on b2. I don't think this is the position, honestly. So I think queen a6 just simply rook takes on b2 is even trickier for white to deal with than usual, because he has some funny knights. Like for instance, okay, careful for a second. If I take, he has check. Do we care? I can block with a knight, so I guess not. Also on rook b6 he has check. So against both he has check. Interesting. Yeah, I think sometimes, to be honest, you can even just castle. And it's very hard for him to defend his pawns. Like if he plays b4, then the one on c3 is gonna be weak. So you get very good compensation. Ideally though, I want to take, and after the check, I think I want to block with a knight. He has no more checks. Knights are kind of in a shady spot. So I think that's the line that we ultimately go for. And well, I think what's kind of interesting and funny about this position is the fact that he's really relying on rook d1. Because then I'm not sure how he wants to defend this knight. Like maybe he wants knight b3, saying that okay, my queen defends the e2 knight, but still feels like a little bit artificial to me. So I think after knight b3 I may just castle. Generally, just think about this idea that for white it's not great to take the pawn on b7, specifically because of this idea. So okay, I'm not like a big expert on how this game is gonna go now, because usually white players don't enter these complications. Because if you like really put yourself in white shoes, they really want more of like a positional game. And when they enter this, it's pretty much kind of compromising the pawn structure. Now these pawns are weak and everything becomes very concrete, not in the style of somebody that plays exchange variation as white. So yeah, he defends as kind of expected. Now I can trade. If I trade though, I'm kind of gonna activate his rook, so I'll rather delay it and castle. If he takes, yeah, I'm happy to recapture towards the center. Very important move, like you have no idea how many low rated players I see whenever they have a position like this to take with the f-pawn, thinking, oh, I'm just gonna be defending my rook. And their voice goes like that, so no. You don't need the rook, that's not how you win this type of games. Like, you just win on the queen side, so gonna take towards the center, and then, you know, maybe we even trap the queen. Would it be completely crazy to think that we can trap his queen? Perhaps I could even have done it on the previous move. And okay, he goes queen to c5, which is kind of nice for him. Because otherwise, if I get to play knight b7, I don't think he would have had any squares for the queen, which is ridiculous. But yeah, queen c5, he's pretty much liquidating into a losing endgame. Is it losing? I mean, he gets a little bit of activity. Like if I take and I go like knight c6, he has knight d4. Kind of activating. So perhaps I should consider queen a6, targeting the knight and targeting the a2 pawn. In a way, I would really love to challenge this, and I think the play is take, and then perhaps knight d7, saying that he doesn't have a way to defend. Because if I go rook b5, he simply has knight b3. But now on knight d7, he no longer has knight b3, because knight b3 would leave the other knight undefended. Still, he could, like, let's say, activate a little, maybe playing rook b1, or maybe doing knight d4, allow me to take, and then like rook b1. But okay, a pawn is a pawn. So whenever you have this type of games against the exchange, win a pawn, trade all the pieces, that is kind of like the gameplay. I know it is not the most exciting thing ever that you sign up for, but hey, is it efficient? Then that's what I really care about. So yeah, opponent kind of puzzled a little bit already. Like, he's sort of running out of good moves and just gonna be taking not much of an option there. And I think on rook b1 we pretty much have to grab the pawn if it's free. Okay, he just goes knight to f1. The only problem that we have is that our knight on d8 is kind of passive, so knight b7 would be a move. I mean, I would like to challenge his knight if possible, but playing rook b6, preparing that, feels a little bit like retreating. Maybe it makes sense to try knight a4, attacking the pawn on c3. I mean, another move that I have is e5, saying, okay, where are you gonna go with knight? It seems that only move is knight b3, targeting my knight, and I could go knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes, but then both of his rooks are activating, like rook d5, rook c3, rook a7. I don't want to see that. So I think perhaps just knight to b7, and if rook b1, like maybe this one, take it and then play knight d6. Okay, he's just going knight back and forth. That allows knight d6, and we kind of managed to solve the only issue of our position, which was activating the knight. And now after knight b3, he's kind of inviting me to take and open up the rook, which I'm not gonna do, of course. You should control your monkey brain a little and not go for any possible trade, but target his weak pawn instead. And notice how carefully the knight on d6 was placed, because he doesn't have the c4 push. I'm gonna bring my last piece into the game, and now this is pretty much textbook play on how to put pressure on his weak pawn. I don't think he really has any way to defend, so from this point on, I think it's gonna pretty much become like a technical win, but still need to be quite careful, as all of his pieces are defending each other. So he has a pretty nice defensive setup. I think we start by taking with a rook. I could also play knight b5, maybe c4. I don't want to allow that break for him. Also, I could do knight c4, putting pressure on the knight. Many tempting moves. I think knight c4 is nice just because we're kind of initiating more trades, so it's not like the pawn from c3 is running anywhere. And that move is, I believe, a small mistake because it allows knight c3. And yeah, all of his pieces are now starting to drop. So we can easily exchange and then infiltrate in his camp. Like take another pawn. I mean, I could even infiltrate, like play for activity instead. Taking that was also fine. I just played rook c2 to look cool. And I can even play g5, try to set him up in a mating net. But I think important first, I want to get the spin so that he never gets to activate the knight. And if he moves the knight, getting the trade, it's like the last nail in the coffin for white. No counterplay, so he just resigns. Very important, before I let you go, if you want to get access to all my experience of playing the Caro-Kann for more than 8 years, feel free to watch the video that will appear on the screen. It is truly my most educational video that I have ever made. It took more than 20 hours to film, and I promise it's gonna help you.